Our next story is about a 4,000-year-old mystery. How were pyramids built? It's a question many have asked. Did they use elephants or carts to carry the stones?
A massive structure built before the Great Flood. It's not just a myth, it is real. The Great Pyramid of Giza, long admired as an ancient marvel, could be hiding a timeline far older than history tells us. This pyramid wasn't just a tomb, but a monument of knowledge from a forgotten civilization. Could it have been created with tools and skills beyond what we imagine ancient people had? Let us dive into the evidence that confirms the pyramids were built by a lost and super advanced civilization from out of this planet. The Great Pyramid's impossible stonework. At first glance, the Great Pyramid seems like a collection of neatly stacked stones, but take a closer look at the basalt stone blocks that make up some of its outer areas. The vertical machine-like marks on these blocks are a real head-scratcher. If you think the ancient builders only had copper tools, these perfect lines carved into one of the hardest types of rock are almost laughable. It raises a question: how could they have managed that? Did they have some kind of advanced tools? The typical narrative that we all learned in school doesn't come close to answering this. Before we delve into this, it's clear that the evidence is far more extraordinary than anyone ever guessed. And this won't be the only discovery that will leave you stunned. Consider the remnants of saw marks found on other stones. These cuts suggest the use of giant circular saws, possibly up to several feet in diameter. We're talking about something far beyond what bronze chisels could do, even if aided by abrasive materials like sand. This kind of technology points to something very advanced, something that doesn't fit the timeline of ancient Egyptian civilization as we understand it. These aren't random scratches, but precise, deliberate cuts that hint at the use of machinery. It's almost like whoever built this had access to tools and technology far more sophisticated than we imagine.
If you look at the famous King's Chamber, its walls and its roof are, the ceiling of the King's Chamber are all made with gigantic granite blocks.
Another baffling aspect of the pyramid complex is the presence of molten granite, visible in channels extending from the Great Pyramid towards the Sphinx. This granite, scorched and partially melted, hints at intense heat. It's not just about building big, it's about manipulating some of the hardest materials known to man. These signs of extreme heat make you wonder, what were they really doing here? Was it some sort of experiment, or maybe an energy-related process that required immense temperatures? The alignment of the three main pyramids of Giza with Orion's belt is another unsolved question. The alignment is so precise that some suggest these structures are much older than traditional history says. They might be 10,000 years old or even older, built by a forgotten civilization long before the known Egyptian dynasties. This possibility becomes more plausible when we realize that not a single Egyptian text mentions the construction of the Great Pyramid. It's almost as if the people we think built it were merely inheriting it from someone else. But it's not just the above-ground wonders that are impressive. Beneath the Giza Plateau lies an underground network of tunnels and shafts, with the Osiris shaft being a standout example. This shaft is about 115 feet below the surface and leads to a chamber containing a massive granite sarcophagus. It's surrounded by an artificial canal filled with water, and there's no obvious source. So how did they maintain a steady water supply in this underground chamber?
The first chamber is a vaulted ceiling. You know you're in a tomb.
The logical explanation is that there was some sort of advanced underground water system, cleverly channeling water through purpose-built hidden tunnels. Now let's talk about the so-called sarcophagi, found not just at Giza, but also at other sites like the Serapeum of Saqqara. These enormous granite boxes weigh up to 70 tons, and they are made with an accuracy that rivals what we can do today with modern tools. The interior surfaces are just as smooth and precisely cut as the exteriors, which makes it difficult to believe that they were made with copper tools. It's as if they were crafted with advanced machinery, with each box carved from a single block of granite. And that begs the question, what were these boxes really used for? The precision seems too extreme for something as simple as burial. Maybe they were used for something else, something that required a perfectly smooth and precise interior. These boxes also have fascinating acoustic properties, especially inside the tunnels where they are located. When sound is produced within these chambers, it resonates in a strange, powerful way. This resonance isn't just an echo, it seems to amplify and sustain the sound, creating an effect that feels almost otherworldly. The deliberate selection of dimensions and materials hints that this was not an accident. Could these boxes have served some purpose involving energy or sound manipulation? If the pyramid's design wasn't surprising enough, the idea it was used to move water or create power makes it even more fascinating. Knowledge buried in Egypt. There is also a controversial theory about the Great Pyramid functioning as a giant water pump. Proposed by Edward Kunkel in the 1960s, the idea suggests that the passages and chambers of the pyramid were used to create a hydraulic effect, pumping water up and out into the surrounding desert. It's easy to dismiss this theory, but when you consider the layout of the subterranean chambers and the evidence of water erosion, it starts to make some sense. The idea of the pyramid as a pump may not be that far-fetched after all, but if it was a pump, then where was the water going? Some have pointed to a site called Zayat El Arian, which is believed to have been another important location connected to this underground water system. During an excavation in the early 1900s, a massive storm flooded a pit at Zayat El Arian, and soon after, the water level strangely dropped. It's believed that the water seeped into an underground chamber, possibly a hidden part of a much larger system. What's even more interesting is that this site is now under strict military control and no one is allowed to explore it. It makes you wonder, why all the secrecy? What could possibly be so important that access is completely restricted? Perhaps it's something that could change our understanding of ancient civilizations forever. In the late 1990s, an engineer named John Cadman picked up Kunkel's theory and decided to put it to the test.
I checked it out. I was just looking at the pictures and the drawings, and I came across Edward Kunkel's pictures, and he had said it was used as some sort of pump.
He built scale models of the Great Pyramid's subterranean chamber to see if it could function as a water pump. His first few attempts failed, but on his fourth try it worked. And it didn't just work, it created a powerful vertical compression wave, a kind of pulse that could be felt through the ground. Cadman realized that the pyramid might have been more than just a water pump. It could have been generating energy in the form of vibrations. If that's true, then this changes everything we thought we knew about the Great Pyramid. It suggests that the ancient builders had a deep understanding of not just construction, but also of energy manipulation. The pulse waves generated by the subterranean pump could have traveled through the granite-lined chambers, possibly generating an electric field. This is something we can only speculate about, but the implications are enormous. It's worth noting that Nikola Tesla, the famous inventor, was obsessed with the pyramids and their potential to generate energy. He even designed his own electromagnetic pyramid, which he believed could transmit energy across the globe. Tesla's work was never fully realized, but his ideas inspired generations of researchers to look at the Great Pyramid as more than just a tomb. In 2018, a study published in the Journal of Applied Physics found that the Great Pyramid could indeed concentrate electromagnetic energy. The researchers found that the pyramid's structure could focus this energy in its internal chambers and under its base, lending more credibility to the idea that it might have functioned as an energy generator of some kind. It's possible that the Great Pyramid was part of a much larger energy-generating system that included other structures around the Giza Plateau. Some researchers believe that the entire complex was designed to harness and manipulate energy, possibly using hydrogen as a fuel source. This theory suggests that the underground chambers and passageways were not just for show, they were part of a sophisticated process involving water splitting, which could create hydrogen to be used for energy. The idea that the pyramids and other ancient structures were built by an advanced civilization that predated the Egyptians is not as far-fetched as it might sound. When you look at the precision of the construction, the alignment with astronomical features, and the possible uses for energy generation, it becomes clear that these were not the works of a primitive society. The builders had a deep understanding of engineering, astronomy, and possibly even physics. a level of knowledge that suggests they were much more advanced than we've been led to believe. If we consider the possibility of an advanced civilization existing before the known Egyptian dynasties, it could explain why there are no records of the pyramids' construction. Perhaps the Egyptians inherited these structures, much like we inherit ancient ruins today. They might have repurposed the pyramids, but they didn't build them from scratch. This theory paints a picture of a lost civilization whose knowledge was so profound that it influenced generations of people long after they had vanished. The way the Great Pyramid was built leads us to other amazing sites in Egypt, showing skills that seem far ahead of their time. Hidden techniques in ancient stonework. But this isn't just about the pyramids. Throughout Egypt, we find evidence of advanced engineering and construction techniques that are difficult to explain.
This is a little rougher here, but these walls are beautifully smooth. They used to polish them with sand.
The Serapeum of Saqqara, with its massive granite boxes, is a perfect example. The precision with which these boxes were crafted suggests they were made with advanced tools that we don't think the Egyptians had. So where did this technology come from? Mainstream archaeology often dismisses these ideas as fringe theories, but the evidence is there for anyone willing to look. The precision of the stonework, the alignment with astronomical features, the possible use of advanced tools, all of this points to a civilization that was much more sophisticated than we've been taught. It's time we started asking the tough questions about our past and being open to the possibility that history is far more complex than we've been led to believe. In pondering these ancient marvels, we might have to face an uncomfortable truth. The dynastic Egyptians may not have been the originators of these incredible feats of engineering. Instead, they might have been the inheritors of a much older, far more advanced civilization, a civilization that understood things we are only now beginning to grasp. The Great Pyramid and the other monuments scattered across Egypt could be the legacy of a forgotten people, a legacy that continues to baffle and inspire us to this day. But let's dig even deeper into the questions of ancient Egypt. Consider the Sphinx, another monumental structure that has captured the imaginations of many. The Sphinx is often believed to be much older than the pyramids, possibly dating back as far as 12,000 years. The evidence for this comes from geological surveys that show signs of water erosion, suggesting that the structure was exposed to heavy rainfall at some point in its history. This kind of weathering is unlikely to have happened during the time of the pharaohs, given that Egypt has been an arid desert for thousands of years. Instead, it points to a time when the climate was significantly different, possibly at the end of the last ice age. This suggests that the Sphinx, like the Great Pyramid, might have been built by a much earlier civilization. It may have served an entirely different purpose from what we traditionally think. The erosion patterns on the Sphinx's body are clear and distinct, unlike anything else from the period of the Egyptian dynasties. This implies that whoever built the Sphinx had access to advanced knowledge and techniques that we can barely understand today. The Sphinx may have been a part of a larger complex, with astronomical and spiritual significance beyond anything the later Egyptians ever documented. We also need to consider the underground chambers beneath the Sphinx. In the 1990s, seismic surveys conducted around the Sphinx revealed anomalies beneath its paws, hollow cavities that could be chambers or tunnels. These findings have led to speculation that there might be hidden rooms containing records or artifacts from an earlier era.
The theory, he thought there is a passage, a tunnel from the paw of the Sphinx to the Great Pyramid.
If these chambers were found and opened, it could potentially rewrite everything we know about human history. Unfortunately, further exploration has been restricted, and the full extent of these underground spaces remains a question. Let's return to the concept of energy generation. The idea that the pyramids could generate electricity might sound outlandish, but there are some intriguing clues that lend weight to this theory. For one, the outer casing of the Great Pyramid was originally made of polished Tura limestone, which is highly reflective. This would have made the pyramid shine brightly, reflecting sunlight and possibly serving as a beacon. But beyond its reflective properties, limestone is also an excellent insulator. The interior chambers, made of granite, are rich in quartz, a material that has piezoelectric properties, meaning it can generate an electric charge under pressure. Could the builders have known this and used it to their advantage? The idea that the Great Pyramid was a giant power plant was further explored by Christopher Dunn, a mechanical engineer who spent decades studying the pyramids. Dunn proposed that the pyramid was designed to harness natural energy sources, possibly seismic energy from the Earth, to produce electricity. According to Dunn, the King's Chamber, with its granite walls and specific dimensions, could have acted as a resonator, amplifying vibrations from the Earth. The Queen's Chamber, with its strange shafts, may have played a role in this process, possibly involving a chemical reaction to produce hydrogen gas. This hydrogen could then have been used to create an electric current, turning the pyramid into a massive energy generator. Dunn's theory might sound far-fetched, but it explains several aspects of the pyramid that traditional archaeology cannot. For instance, the precision with which the stone blocks were cut and fitted together is unparalleled. The pyramid's builders seem to have an almost obsessive focus on accuracy, something that makes more sense if the structure was meant to serve a functional purpose rather than just being a tomb. The use of granite in key areas, the alignment with magnetic north, and the resonance properties of the chambers all point to something much more complex than a simple burial monument. The tools used to shape massive stones, like the unfinished obelisk, show just how advanced these ancient builders really were. Ancient knowledge that changed the world. The concept of ancient technology isn't limited to the pyramids and the Sphinx. All across Egypt, we find evidence of advanced stoneworking techniques that defy explanation. Take the unfinished obelisk at Aswan, for example. This massive piece of granite, weighing over 1,200 tons, lies partially carved from the bedrock. The tool marks on the obelisk suggest that it was being cut using a method far more advanced than what copper tools could achieve. The sheer scale of the obelisk, combined with the precision of the work, raises questions about how it was being carved and what kind of tools were used. The obelisks that were completed and transported to other locations are equally baffling. These towering monuments were carved from single pieces of granite and transported hundreds of miles from the quarries at Aswan to their final destinations. The logistics of moving such massive objects, let alone erecting them, are staggering. Even with today's technology, it would be a challenging task. So how did the ancient Egyptians manage it? Some researchers believe that they may have used sound or vibration to reduce the weight of these objects, a technique that has been lost to time. There are also stories from other cultures that hint at similar technologies. In South America, legends speak of stones being levitated using sound, allowing massive blocks to be moved effortlessly. Could it be that the builders of ancient Egypt had access to a similar technology? The precision with which the stones at Giza are cut and placed suggests that they had methods of moving and shaping stone that were far more advanced than simple brute force and manual labor. If we accept the possibility that an advanced civilization existed before the rise of the known Egyptian dynasties, it opens up a whole new understanding of our past. This civilization may have been global, with knowledge and technologies that were shared across continents. The similarities between ancient structures in different parts of the world suggest that there was some level of contact or communication between these early cultures. Perhaps they were all part of a network, working together to harness the power of the earth and the stars. This idea is supported by the legends and myths of many cultures, which speak of a time when gods or advanced beings walked the earth, sharing their knowledge with humanity. The stories of Atlantis, Lemuria, and other lost civilizations may be more than just myths. They could be memories of a time when humanity was far more advanced than we are today. The sudden rise of civilizations like ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Indus Valley all around the same time suggests that they may have been inheriting knowledge from an earlier source rather than developing it independently. The question then becomes, what happened to this advanced civilization?
Sea level rise, it creates a powerful high energy zone. Anything that was existing on those flooded coastlines has just been pounded to hell. I mean, talk about it, Randall.
Why did it disappear, leaving behind only fragments of its knowledge? Some researchers believe that a cataclysmic event such as a comet impact or a massive flood could have wiped out this early civilization, leaving only a few survivors to pass on their knowledge. This theory is supported by the many flood myths found in cultures around the world, all of which speak of a time when the Earth was devastated by water and only a few people survived to rebuild. If such an event did occur, it would explain why the knowledge of this advanced civilization was lost and why the later cultures that inherited their monuments were unable to replicate their achievements. The dynastic Egyptians, for example, may have revered the pyramids and the Sphinx, but they lacked the knowledge to build anything comparable. The same can be said for other ancient cultures, which often built their own monuments near older, more advanced structures, as if trying to connect with a past they barely understood. The idea that our history is far older and more complex than we've been taught is not an easy one to accept. It challenges everything we think we know about human civilization and forces us to reconsider the capabilities of our ancestors. But the evidence is there in the precision of the stonework, the advanced engineering, and the astronomical alignments. These were not the works of a primitive people. They were the achievements of a civilization that understood the world in ways we are only beginning to grasp. The Great Pyramid of Giza, the Sphinx, and the other monuments of ancient Egypt are not just relics of a bygone era. They are clues to a forgotten past, a past in which humanity may have reached heights of knowledge and technology that rival our own. The precision, the engineering, and the possible uses for energy generation all point to a civilization that was far more advanced than we've been led to believe. It's time we started asking the tough questions about our history and being open to the possibility that there is much more to our past than we ever imagined. The legacy of this lost civilization continues to inspire and baffle us, urging us to look deeper, question more, and perhaps one day rediscover the incredible achievements of our ancient ancestors. Could the Great Pyramid truly be proof of a lost, advanced civilization, or is it simply an extraordinary ancient tomb? Tell us your thoughts and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.